Hello, everyone. This is Stuart Gandolf, and welcome again to our podcast. And man, I just love doing this because I get to talk to some of the leaders in our industry, people I've known for years. And today I have a couple of special guests that are truly leaders in the whole world of healthcare marketing, healthcare internet. They helped form where we are today. They were part of the sort of thought leadership. All the stuff we do today, if you're not familiar with this, came from somewhere. And Kathy Divis and Mike Schneider were two of the innovators in this field. So welcome, Kathy. Welcome, Mike.
Thanks, Stuart. Glad to be here.
Yeah, thank you, Stuart. Those are kind words.
Yeah, for sure. Well, so I bragged about you a little already, but I would love you guys to share, if you both could go kind of individually and talk about, a quick version of your background, and both Greystone and HCIC, the kinds of things you do every day. We could do a little origin story for a moment before we get into it, if you guys like, along the way, just to get a sense. We'll talk more about the conference later, but just to give people grounding if they don't know you, because I've been to your conference, I don't know, at least a dozen times, but not everybody is like that. So I'd love you to give them some feeling about it.
Sure. Great. Well, I'm Kathy Divis, and I'm excited to be here on your podcast for the second time. So thank you for having me back. I am president of Greystone Net. We started back in the early 1990s, which is a little bit hard to believe, as a traditional healthcare marketing company. We worked a lot with hospital systems providers, had a variety of different services, but over the years we've kind of settled into a very strong digital and internet related niche. Consulting and services and products, and our annual conference, which is the Healthcare Interactive Conference, which is in its 29th year this year.
Wow.
So we're excited.
That's great. And then Mike?
And we've been to all 29, although you've only been to 12. You're kind of a rookie still, but we'll keep you.
That's great. Mike?
Yeah, Kathy covered a lot. So I'm Mike Schneider. I'm the executive vice president, and I'm also a principal at Greystone. Kathy and I are business partners, and Kathy talked a lot about, historically, where we started. It's hard to believe. I love that when she said we were traditional marketing, because back then it was the only kind of marketing. I mean, that was it, billboards and yellow pages and all that kind of stuff. But we got swept up in kind of like the tech side of things. And, as the internet emerged, the light bulb went off for a lot of healthcare organizations. And, we started doing digital marketing, is what we kind of refer to it as today, but we were a part of that from the beginning. So that's where we started, the Healthcare Internet Conference, which is now the Healthcare Interactive Conference, was the idea of getting people together to talk about it. Because, at that time, for a lot of people, it was brand new. And so there were a lot of questions as to where is this going to go? And is the internet really going to be something, or is it going to be a fad that disappears? And I mean, it's funny to think about that now, but back then, I mean, people were really on the fence about it. Like, who's going to look at us online? Would a patient really go to a website to try and figure out, which healthcare organization to go to and that kind of thing? But as time went on, we saw content evolve. We saw the whole strategy behind it evolve, and the integration of traditional marketing and digital marketing, and then there was CRM. And so if you think about the length of time that our conference has been going on, we've been tackling a lot of the what is the current issue kind of issues all the time at the conference. And it's evolved to be, very much of a, I think, melting pot of what people are doing in hospital and healthcare system marketing and what's coming up. I mean, that's always the big thing at HCIC, is like, what's next? As you can imagine, I mean, our agenda is full of AI and SEO and a ton of other things this year. We've had a lot of policy discussions. And so there are a lot of things, that I think folks are dealing with now and wondering what's next. And that's kind of been part and parcel to our conference for the last almost 30 years.
Yeah, and it's great. And I want to dive right into the conference in just a moment, but for just to sort of cap the last comment you guys just made. So I remember, I've been involved with this business since the 90s as well. And like in the back in the day, the doctors were really in charge, even at the hospital level, and there was very insular. Everybody thought, like, from their own point of view, it was really hard to think about the rest of the world. And so there was definitely, like, I remember, some of our mutual friends started documenting the first Facebook pages on hospitals, and it's weird now to think about that. But like, should we have a Facebook page? Why would we have a Facebook page? We're a hospital, and so how far things have come. It took forever. It was very, very slow.
I remember trying to explain this to my parents because my mom and dad were like, "Tell me what you do again." And so, I would say it's hospital and healthcare system marketing. And they're like, "Well, don't you just go where your doctor tells you to?"
Oh, that is so funny. My mother at one point goes, "Is what you're doing legal?" And then she saw me coming. She came and saw my agency. Finally, it made sense to her. She actually got to tour where we were before pandemic. We had beautiful office. Like, oh, okay, now I get it, I think. So yeah, it's pretty funny.
Well, my mother is 88 years old, and to this day, she says, "I don't know what my daughter does. She works for hospitals and she helps fill them up."
No,
And I think, oh, that could mean so many things, but okay.
Awesome. So I ask you guys both here because, like, and people listen to the podcast and people who know me, and you guys know me for sure. Like, I love what's new. It's always been one of my things. I asked my former boss at the agency I worked at before I founded this one, what's my brand internally? He's like, Stuart, you're always the innovator. You just love what's new. And I do. For good and ill, I'll jump off the building and figure out how to fly on the way down just because I decided I want to try to do that. So I always love that. And I love that the HCIC conference is great for that. And the stuff you guys are talking about this year, we're going to talk about your agenda this year, is some of the exact same things we're talking about daily, internally to our audience. As we're evolving and, we're building a new train as it drives. And so, like to me, I love, interacting with people and networking there, sharing our ideas, learning from others. And that's how you get to be good, right? Like if you're really good, you can't just say you're a thought leader and never actually go to anything and be insular. You have to like actually talk to people maybe. So let's talk about some of the things that you guys are going to expect to be big. And your agenda of some of the issues you guys shared with me in advance are not at all surprising to me. So the first one is like topic number one. I just actually committed to 2 webinars last night about this topic, you guys, just as we do a lot of speaking. The impact of AI on marketing and digital ecosystem. Tell me like what's going on from your guys' point of view. I'll have my own 2 cents later, but I'd love to hear from you guys first. Like what's happening with AI? What's happening in the digital ecosystem?
Well,
And is it really as big as I'm telling my audience that this is that big? Like, tell me what you guys think.
I'll start at a high level and then I'll let Mike kind of jump in. But I think AI has been a topic at our conference for a couple of years now. And last year I thought it was the big topic, but this year I know it's the big topic. And I really think we're seeing a maturing of the topic. And that's what excites me because in the last couple of years, some of the things that we were talking about is, am I going to lose my job? Is all the content going to be written by AI? Those kinds of things. I'm not saying that's gone away entirely, but we're really talking these days, and at least on our agenda, on how AI is getting incorporated into all the different parts of not only marketing a health system and a hospital system, but really the operational piece of it. So we're going to be going deep into how it's becoming part of the ecosystem, I think, across the board.
That's great. And then Mike, what would you add to that?
Well, I was just going to say, I mean, I couldn't agree more with Kathy, and it's really become more mature, but we're still not at the top level of maturity. And so there's still a lot of discussion. And as Kathy alluded to, I mean, I think there are still folks who do wrestle with, is it going to take my job? And, is it good or evil and those kinds of things. But I definitely agree also that we have moved into the details of how AI is helping move marketing in healthcare and marketing in other industries too. But at our conference, it's going to be marketing in healthcare forward. And there are a lot of things that AI does. So it's funny because it seems like the same thing that happened with the internet 20 years ago or whatever. It's like when you say the word internet, we think about a website, but what we're really talking about is a lot of different things. It's SEO and it's content and it's integration with legacy systems. And so if you get into the details of what the internet is and what a website does, it's more than just at the high level of how does an internet work, but it's really, how does it facilitate what we're trying to do in our jobs? And that's where we are with AI. So what is AI doing? It's agentic AI. It's helping call centers assist agents to make decisions to help you select a provider or make an appointment. It's part of searches. So, it's the whole idea that when you go to Google, you don't just type in the keywords and get a list of websites, but now you also get an AI assisted guide, let's say, to answering your question and then moving you on to a site if you choose to do that. It is creating content, but it's also integrating with your stack. I mean, I was just on a call this morning and it was a great conversation. And we were talking about how if you look at a healthcare system and they've got a marketing stack and you've got 20 different tools that you're using, there are AI tools that are integrating all 20 of those tools in what they're helping you do. So they're helping you write the content and then pick the right target audience in the CRM, and then make sure the content is written in a way so that it performs well in search engine, and helping you decide to how you take the next step and integrating with the links to, your EMR. So it's an integrator, and it's when you look at how other industries are utilizing AI, it's also almost like your own personal assistant. I mean, you've got AI there and you can ask it to help you solve a problem that you're dealing with, pick the right marketing mix or pick the right target audience or, pick the right strategy. And so it's a lot of different things. And I think, that's the thing that we're finding at the conference is that we do have, let's say 15 or 20 different presentations out of the over 60 that are going to be made that are going to be talking about AI. And for each of them, we're talking about a different aspect of AI. So it's not 20 presentations on the topic of AI, but it's 20 presentations that are all different in terms of how they're using AI.
So I think that's really important. I remember a couple years ago at your conference and a couple others, AI, when it first really became a thing that what people were talking about every day, and became from just an obscure topic to front and center. It was about the more basic things, right? Like, for example, copywriting and visuals. And that was, and I would like to actually break this down a little bit because I think each of these topics are worth exploring just for a moment. But the AI part of it, um, as you would expect, was kind of like, where are we, right? We're just sort of grasping at space. Like, what does this even mean? It wasn't how do we take advantage? It's like, what does it mean? And how do we even like get our mind around it? And there still is some legitimate fear out there. Like, there are people on my team that study this stuff very deeply who are very concerned what it means. It's a little bit like Skynet from the Terminator sometimes when you think about it. So, like when they start talking about like, self-teaching machines, like, wait, wasn't that a storyline in some movie I saw? So there's a lot there. But on a more positive note, I would love actually to ask, we're going to talk about the conference mostly today, but just in terms of your own business, what kinds of AI questions with the Greystone Consulting side are people coming to you with? Like, what are the nagging fears that they're concerned about, or the nagging things that they're helping that you guys can help them solve? Is it still like how to choose which website, CMS, or is it much more about AI and how does this stuff all fit together?
I guess I would say it's kind of all over the board. I mean, to be honest with you, when I look at it I do a fair amount of call center related contact consulting. When I look at that, there's a lot of use of AI, agentic AI, other types of things in call centers. So there's a lot of conversation about how can we or how should we be using AI to front our calls, to analyze our call quality, to review our performance, those kinds of things. So there's all of that. In the more general area of let's call it marketing. I mean, I still think there's a lot of conversations around what tools should we be using, what tools should we be using for what purpose, how do we integrate if every tool in our stack, as Mike said a few minutes ago, has an AI component. How do we merge those things together? How do I make sure that what I'm using to help me develop content, integrates with what I'm using in my CRM and those kinds of things. So I think there's a lot of just basic, how do I pick the right tool? What is the right tool? I think there's strategy, probably to back up a minute. It's probably two pronged. There's the strategic part, what tools do I use and why to achieve what goals? And then there's the tactical piece of it, the implementation. How do I integrate? How do I build these into my workflows? So those are the kinds of things people are coming to us with, in my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And Stuart, you talked a little bit about it, but we still have and I think we will for a while, still have people that are just don't they're not 100% comfortable with AI as a tool and how to use it. And it's mostly that fear of not really knowing how it works or what it is or understanding, whether it's going to take somebody's job or not. Those are kind of like the big barriers. And so when we've got folks that are asking us for help in consulting, sometimes people are on that end of the equation. It's just like, how do I create the right guidelines for using AI in the organization, and how do we get started? And, it, how do we notate if we're using AI to help us write content? And so there's some of that, I'll call it basic, but it's just like, dipping your toe in the pool to get the ball rolling aspects of it. And then on the other end of the spectrum, we have clients that are coming to us saying, how do we structure our website content as a semantic data layer to enhance the readability of the content so that it improves AI-driven search visibility? And that's a whole, different level of this. It's people that have accepted and are using AI and trying to then figure out how to best use the AI tool to fine tune it. It's like, I've got AI writing content for me, but I want to have the best possible search outcome that I can in the content that I'm writing. So how do I leverage AI to help me get to that level? It's, as Kathy talked about, it's embedded in a lot of tools. So it's that whole idea of, what AI tools do I purchase and buy on the outside or use on the outside, like at the easiest example, something like Chat GPT or Copilot or whatever. And then how do I make sure that whatever other tools I'm using have the AI inside kind of built in to how the tool utilizes AI? So CRM platforms that have AI built into it to help you make better decisions about picking the right target audience or the right marketing strategy.
Great. Man, we need to hang out. Hopefully, I'll get to find some time. I know you guys is busy with your own show. We got to find some time to hang out, because this is what we're talking about every day. So, I have to jump in on a couple comments here. One is, with our agency, I have an AI and innovation club every month, and we talk about the latest. And in fact, usually it's optional. Last month, it was a 2-month mandatory meeting. Like, it's no longer optional. You have to be at this meeting. There's so much going on, just to understand it. And our head of digital marketing, Brandon, is sort of a master in this category. And so he's coming off the mountaintops with like the latest for the team to try to consume what they can. So there's a lot there. And I think if the part about the jobs, if you guys, it's such a rich topic you just gave me. I have to run with some of this. So the job thing is real, right? My daughters are both in entertainment. One's an animator, and she's thinking like, what does this mean to me when I'm starting my new career in a skill that people can reduce to? So there is some shifting that's happening there. And then also, like in any human species or any human population, one of my favorite models was in college, I remember, was the diffusion of innovation. So that's the one where you have the early adopters, the innovators, the laggards, the early adopters, mid adopters, late majority, whatever, all that stuff. Yep. So that's the case anywhere, in anything, in any endeavor. When it comes to AI, there's a whole lot of people still that are in the
denial phase.
Denial phase, yeah. That's what makes the models there over to the Kubler-Ross model, right? They're in denial. They're still fighting it. And there's other people that are just eating it up alive. And so, again, I like this stuff, so I tend to eat stuff up and just kind of throw caution to the wind. But not everybody's like that. And let's talk about an easy topic. that seems easy on the topic that you just raised there, Mike, would be copy. So, in past shows, everybody was talking about what does this mean for our writing team? And, I've heard people from some pretty big hospitals say, well, we're not looking to fire everybody just yet. But I mean, come on, let's be realistic. We probably won't need as many people in the future, right? So there's that sort of double-edged sword. But just writing copy is one thing. But what you just talked about is something that we really embrace internally to leverage the team members that we have. So we're not looking at firing people on our team. We're looking at giving them more for our clients with the same budget. So, for example, when it comes to copy, like how do we integrate that with our SEO just to make it much stronger? How do we get the schema stuff? All the things that, you know, were labor intensive before and slow. How can we speed that up and get better content quicker? So I'd love to hear some of your thoughts about the writing side of it because it's kind of like step one. There's a lot of more sophisticated stuff we're going to talk about in a moment, but just the writing side. Do you agree? Do you still interest in that coming up at HCIC this year? Is it about scaling? Is it about cutting costs? Is it about integrating with SEO? Any comments on that?
Well, I mean, everybody follows, I think, the EEAT, kind of mantra that, you have to write with experience, expertise, what's that, authority
And trust.
and
Yeah.
trust.
Yeah.
Okay, so you've got to do that. And that's going to require, in my opinion, some human interaction, particularly in healthcare. I'm not saying you can't have a first draft through on something that comes from AI. But if you really want to become that authority and show up in searches and do those kinds of things, then you're really going to have to put in your hospital expertise or your physician expertise, and you're going to have to show their experience and their authority and become that trusted source. So I think it has to go deeper. I guess, it's one thing if you're writing copy for an ad. It's maybe different if you're writing, a little deeper content for your website. I think there's going to be human interaction, absolutely. I don't know for how long. I read something yesterday or saw something yesterday that said that, a brief that a paralegal would do might take 5 or 6 weeks, and it takes 10 minutes on AI.
Wow.
And I mean, it's just amazing what they can do. Now, somebody still has to go back and make sure that it's accurate, that the references are correct, that the references that they pull aren't, made up or taken from something that's, not trustworthy. So there's still a role, absolutely. But can it speed things up?
For sure.
And will it?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I mean, I have an analogy. It might make us all uncomfortable, but I mean, if this was 1975 and not 2025, and you walked into a hospital and there was a big, let's say, senior staff meeting, somebody would bring their secretary to take notes and sit down and handwrite all the notes from the meeting and then type it all up on a typewriter and then make copies on the copy machine and then hand it out to people so they had notes from the meeting. I mean, are meeting notes no longer essential in 2025? No, they're not. But we do a different way. So you can have a voice that listens to the meeting and takes notes, or we're all taking notes on our laptops while we're sitting there during the meeting and people share it electronically. So we've gotten more efficient and better at it in that period of time. It doesn't mean that note taking disappeared. It just means that we use technology and efficiency to get better at it. And we probably know more that happened in a meeting than we did in the days that the secretary was just taking notes.
So I got to share a fun fact on this. So in full disclosure to our audience, like by one of our guests introduced us to Fathom. We use Fathom on our podcast because it makes it easy for our writer who's listened to the thing, but to understand the context better and to make sure we cover all the points. So we don't just put up the Fathom notes onto our podcast summary, but it does help her write it for sure. It helps her write it better. And Mike, I got to tell you, for me, I think I'm a really good listener. I mean, I do it for the meeting. I'm shocked at how much I miss when I go back and look at the Fathom notes. I have a lot more bias than I realized. I hear things the way I want to hear them. Like, it is really enlightening to go back and look at those notes. And so almost not all of our meetings we use Fathom with. We use a lot, but I use it for this. I'm using, like we strongly believe that in our writing, we don't do anything for clients that's just popped out of the machine. We have senior writers with 10 years experience in healthcare plus, and we think that's really important. Um, but to ideate, to think of content like content gap analysis for SEO, things like that, that are really, really a lot of labor, are things that we can get to where we need to go faster and deliver more value for our clients rather than less. So again, our effort is not on saving money, it's more on getting more value for the same money. And then I would say but in terms of my own use of AI for writing, like I'm a writer. That's what I do. I'm like, it's one of those things, you guys, terrible at a lot of things, but writing was a natural gift for me. Like I'm good at that. Like I'm basketball, ugh, horrible, but I'm good at writing. But I'm using AI a lot, especially for not for writing like stuff that's important. Like I had um, a roommate squabble with one of the parents of my kids in college that I had to write out and then build a case. And she, by the way, the other parent was an attorney, so that one I had to write out personally. But if I'm writing a description for a webinar, sometimes I'll ideate the idea of the name of the webinar. I'll just tell the machine, I wanted to cover these 6 points, give me a rough draft. And so, like, when I'm working at 10 o'clock at night to get a hand on speeding up the process of that, I'll do that for sure.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so it's stupid not to. Why would you not?
Yeah.
Right.
I
And
totally agree.
I was just going to say, I earlier in the year, I collaborated on a white paper with a group of folks, and we were writing about the topic of appropriately leveraging CRM to drive ROI for healthcare systems. And I wrote mine like I always do, like, off the top of my head, what are the 5 things that you have to know, and da 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 da. But I decided I'm going to go back and I'm going to ask AI these questions, and AI came up with a couple of fantastic ideas that I hadn't thought of that were
Exactly.
there. Like they were on the edge of what I was writing about, but the way that AI portrayed it, I thought that's a better way of saying it. So I think it made the white paper tons better. I didn't use, what AI wrote word for word, but it helped me be a little more creative and I think a little more strategic because it helped me put the right words in there that were better than the words that I came up with.
I totally agree. Like I'll do it, and I find here's what my summary on this is before I switch topics. Smart people, you know, educated people in our world, just being keeping it real, have a big advantage in our society. And the good news and the bad news about this will further the gap. Like if you're already reasonably intelligent and you're using this as a tool, you're going to be that much ahead of everybody else, which career-wise is great. Maybe not so great for everybody, but it definitely is an enabler. And I do the same thing. I usually will come up with, again, I'm like good at some things, not at others. I'm pretty good at the creative writing side and thinking through how to, speak and how to put together a story. But I almost always find one or two things that I would have missed that make it stronger. So it's not like, but I'm not starting with a blank page either, right? I'm not like starting with like, just do my job for me. No, I have a pretty good idea where I want to go. I'm just looking for input on how to make that tighter. Or like, for example, last night when I was working one of these webinars, they asked me for, takeaways and these different things. And two of them I agreed on. One of them I'm like, no, it's all wrong. But it's still, when I'm doing this at 10 or 11 o'clock at night, I really want it to be fast. And so it's helpful in that way. Let's pivot a little bit. You guys mentioned something else. You guys gave me so much fodder. This is so much fun for me. You guys talked about the tech stack. So we as an agency, and I may have mentioned this on previous podcasts, this year I told Brandon and the rest of my digital team that this is the year that we're going to mature our tech stack because we've been using tech forever. People outside would-be investors that call us periodically are like, they look at us as a tech-enabled healthcare service provider, and we are. We're not. We do create our own proprietary things, but we're also riding the rails of technology, right? We're not inventing WordPress. We're using other people's technology and leveraging that. But this year I decided with AI, things have changed so much. We need to go back and look at all the tech stack because there's some things we've been using, for example, our call tracking platform for years, and there wasn't enough change in the industry to warrant really going looking very deep. They were all pretty the same. But today, in the age of AI, there's vast differences in the capability of various tools along the way. So for us, it's a strategic imperative as an agency to number one, pick best in class for our clients, which we've invested a boatload of time in. And then number two, to gain efficiencies because we have to use these across the board. Because it used to be when people came to us, we just sort of adopt whatever tech stack they have. And if you think about efficiency, that's terrible because we're not really mastering all these other techs. We want to come back with a strong position saying, We've looked at them all. We highly recommend use X for call tracking. We highly recommend use Y for agents to answer phone calls. What is like along this topic and tech stack, any additional comments you guys would have about, things that you think will be interesting at HCIC? And is our agency alone or a lot of people thinking this way to update their tech stack?
I mean, I think a lot of people are. I think it's an always moving ball. You know what I mean? Like when it comes to your tech stack, you can't be a healthcare marketer or any kind of marketer and not constantly be wondering, do I still have the right stack? And are there things that could be better?
Yeah.
And we're at that point, as we've talked about, kind of like an inflection point where AI is becoming a player in many of the automated things that we do. And so I think it's imperative that people ask those questions. A lot of our clients are asking those questions. A lot of agencies are asking those questions. Do we still have the right tech stack? If we do, does the tool that I'm using leverage AI to the best capabilities, or it doesn't have to be AI. It could be, are we integrating with databases in the best possible way, using our CRM? And how CRMs integrated with databases 5 years ago is different than how it works today. So are we using a tool that has the most updated technology or not? I think you have to kind of continually reevaluate that stack. And obviously, money isn't infinite and time isn't infinite. So you also have to pick your battles. Where are my pain points for this year? And then for those pain points, do I have what I need to help me continue to move forward? And is it, are they on the edge, or do I need to start to look at something different?
Yeah, I agree. I would just say that to me it feels like, Mike, that the toy box has been turned upside down. Like the differences between, so I agree that you always want to look at your tech stack, and we always do and have, but the difference was smaller between the different platforms. So a lot of times, again, going back to like you always want optimal, but is it economically worth it
Yeah.
in terms of time and money and attention? But now, like there's a huge at least in my experience, a huge variation in quality. Like our previous standard call tracking platform has AI in theory, but it pales compared to other ones. So unfortunately, we'll
Well,
look at that. Yeah, we'll look at
just
that as another option for the budget conscious clients, but we're going to invest more for other clients. Go ahead, Kathy.
I was just going to say, Mike and I watched or participated in a demo yesterday with a healthcare related company that's doing front end call tracking, a lot of agentic AI for healthcare. It's phenomenal what they're doing. And they have a lot of clients. It's not vaporware. And so when I look at what that particular company is doing versus others, there's a night and day difference. And there would be real value in moving someone in that direction, in my opinion. But then I think the other thing that I think that is coming down the pike for healthcare, and probably has been for a while, is this almost mandate to consolidate your technology. And so there are a lot of organizations out there that are trying to weed out a variety of different tech platforms so that they have, one or two that they're supporting, not 22 that they're supporting.
Yeah.
And so that's always that fight between best in breed and, single platform. And so, I think that's another battleground that's coming. Do I take the very best at call tracking, or do I take something that's less good, but it's already part of something that the IT department is maintaining, paying for, supporting, that kind of thing. And I think that's a real battle that's going to be coming down the road.
I
And
totally
that's
get it.
where I'm sorry, I was just going to say, because I think Kathy's absolutely right. And that's where this idea of AI possibly helping you from a human, whatever, FTE support standpoint is really valuable, because I've got a client right now that has a stack of 20 different vendors that they utilize for digital marketing, and they've got 1.5 people that are in charge of marketing. And so they don't get the most out of all those tools all the
Yeah.
time because they don't have the time or the energy to do it. But with AI, they do have the ability to be able to go in and leverage a lot of tools across different platforms and help AI helps them integrate some of that. And it also creates some differentiation. I mean, so you get to a point where you say, maybe I don't need this one. Maybe we're not using that one. So to Kathy's point, I think there's also consolidation that happens.
So it's really interesting. I'm going to move on into the next topic in a sec, but I remember watching the news years ago during one of the Iraq wars, and they were talking about the tanks had so much information the soldiers couldn't use it. It was just like flying at them in the real time.
Yeah.
So they had to figure out how to curate that in the heat of battle, and that's really what we're talking about now, which is how do you curate what matters, what's noise and what matters? Because humans are humans. We don't have time to do everything. It's not realistic. Like usually there's 5 to 7 things you need to fix that have enormous impact, and there's everything else. I do want to go. I want to pivot a little bit to something that you guys had mentioned that is the bane of our existence as an agency, which is booking appointments. Like that has been the number one challenge in doing this for many years. Of like we drive thousands of calls to somebody and they can't answer their phone, or it gets put on hold for 10 minutes, or then finally, and of course, I used to get a big kick out of this when I was speaking live. What are the two things patients really want to be able to do online? And the answers were communicate with their doctor and be able to schedule their own appointment. What are two things doctors and hospitals steadfastly don't want to let them do? Communicate with their doctors and schedule appointments online. And there's still some of that. And so things are obviously better, but rather than go down the rabbit hole of every potential technology, the one thing that's really exciting to me is, and Kathy, this is probably a Kathy question, especially, with call centers, that's a very human, high labor, difficult business. It ebbs and flows. Monday mornings at an urgent care chain is insane. So and nighttime calls don't need to be answered. How do you triage this? There's legal liability too if we give the wrong answer. There's just a lot with that. But the idea of AI bots being able to answer the calls professionally, correctly, being able to route the calls, and especially new patients to give them an experience that, as everybody else gives them a good experience, why is it healthcare can't? Like, I think that is a huge opportunity. So for us this year, I mentioned our tech stack. We are really drilling down on the call tracking platforms. And then we're also drilling down on this particular issue. Not every client wants to adopt this yet, but to me, it seems like absolutely essential. Are you seeing the same kind of level of interest? Because there's probably 30 companies I'm familiar with right now that do AI bot answering for calls. Like, what do you think is the future, and where are we now? What's the future?
I think 100% it's the future. I mean, I really do. I mean, the demo that I was just telling you about earlier that Mike and I saw yesterday was all about an agentic AI front end for our call center. And honestly, they could probably answer way more than half of the questions that most people wanted. This particular demo that we saw integrated with Epic. And so it was a real-time integration with the Epic schedule. And so if somebody called and said, hey, I've got an appointment on Tuesday, I need to cancel, the agent was able to walk them through, changing the appointment. That the digital agent was able to walk them through changing the appointment to an available slot a few days later. That's definitely the future.
Yeah, for sure.
It's, may take a while for some people to get there, but it's the way it's going. I have zero doubt about that.
So there's also, I don't know if you guys are familiar with this yet, but like in the last couple of weeks, a class action lawsuit against a big dental service organization, DSO, about the use of AI, saying like, well, this call may be recorded wasn't enough, that you're using my data in other ways. So it'll be interesting to see if that slows the industry down, because that's a sort of shiver along the.
Well, in this particular one, I mean, it's very real life sounding. You'd be hard pressed not to know that it wasn't a live person, but it did answer with, "Hi, I'm the such and such digital agent here to help you." So I mean, it was upfront about it. This is a digital agent.
I think that's a big step forward for sure. I'd be really just ethically, it's a good idea to announce that, and
Yeah,
certainly legally
absolutely.
Yeah.
too.
Yeah.
Yeah, no. But you do still have you have the same data issues that you have with any kind of collection system,
Yeah.
whether it's AI driven or not. I mean, it may be more integrated, obviously, but agents have an awful lot of access to information too that can be um, parceled into other databases along the
And,
way.
and just this is a little bit of tangential information, but it's some, on line with what we're talking about. One of the things we do at Greystone is we do some research. So we have a research tool that's called GSite. It goes on a hospital or healthcare system website and collects data about the user's experience and then how that had an impact on their perception of that organization's brand. So one of the greatest dissatisfiers, it won't be any surprise to you, is not being able to talk to the doctor and not being able to make an appointment.
Right.
But you have hospital and healthcare system websites or apps that say make an appointment now. It's like right there on the homepage. And so as a patient, you have an expectation, right? You go and you look at the page and it says make an appointment now, and I've got a child and I know my child has strep throat and I just need some penicillin. So, I go to the website and you find out, oh, but we don't make appointments for pediatrics. Or we don't make appointments on Saturdays, Sundays, and Mondays. Or the next appointment that you can get is 4 weeks from now. And so what we're doing is inadvertently sometimes creating this huge dissatisfier by almost, I would say, kind of like false advertising, not really, but you can't
Yeah,
just
bait
make
and
any
switching.
appointment anytime. So you've got to be able to find a way to have the right message with the right words about what you can do in terms of making an appointment. And to Kathy's point, I think that we can facilitate that better with tools like the one that she's talking about, where we can make appointments in a more efficient way or answer questions that are really easy to answer, as opposed to creating kind of a clog or a unsatisfying answer at the end that you didn't get what you needed or you didn't get that appointment that you wanted.
And
So,
what's nice about that is then you can use your human agents for the difficult calls and for
That's
the
right.
difficult tasks and
that's
for
where I
the
think.
things that need more human touch. And so that frees up that resource to do those kinds of things.
So I want to pivot again just for the sake of time here. But I remember I did a podcast with, I think it was Jim Merlino or Paul Matson, somebody from Cleveland Clinic. I forget which one we talked to that particular day, but it was about Cleveland Clinic at the time made a pivot to insisting on, appointments being made within 48 hours. And that's a leadership imperative that
It's a
drives all
big
the
deal.
tech stack, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know where they are today with that, but that's, you have to have the leadership support because the tech stuff doesn't solve it. You have to have the will to
Right.
make these things better. Then the tech can be enabled and really make a difference.
That's right.
A topic that's burning for us as an agency is the decline of traditional SEO. And this is probably the most important topic. I've been saving it toward the end for the A students who listen all the way through today. But like in March, we can show to the day. We have data that shows to the day when AI overviews, Google changed the algorithm and
Mhm.
AI overviews became much more dominant. And in healthcare, about 35% of traffic evaporated overnight from
Yeah,
organic. And so that is a monumental, cataclysmic change. There
it
are certain
is.
companies out there like HubSpot, which isn't a healthcare provider, but they had just a machine for SEO for any digital marketing topic you want. They lost I forget what the number is, but like 80 or 90% of their traffic recently over the last year or so. So this is really changing things. So this is something we talk about a lot in terms of, um, and I'll save our own comments for future podcasts and webinars. But I'd love to hear what you guys are hearing about and expect to hear at the conference about, how do you pivot in this new AI overview chat GPT phase, both organically and with paid search and other forms of digital.
Yeah, it's interesting because I've heard everything from SEO is dead to it's not dead, it's just reincarnating in a different way. And I just recently read, I wish I remember where it was, but that about 2/3 of all Google searches now end in zero click-throughs.
Yep.
So that's huge.
Yeah.
I mean, and I see it myself personally. I read the overview and I go, oh, okay, good. But so I do think it's a big deal. I think healthcare obviously has to figure out how to become part of that trusted AI overview, and how you can do that. And I do think that people who click through to some of the other options are probably more qualified. Because if I've read the overview and I'm still searching, I'm going deeper, that's probably a good thing. But yeah, it's a cataclysmic change.
Mike, any comments on that?
Well, I was just going to say it is a cataclysmic change. But we have to think about where the ball is. And, I think about it, it's the funnel. The top of the funnel is people that have questions and come to your site and they're looking for information. And then they go through our website or they go through the answers to the questions that they need to get to ultimately make a decision and convert. And so whether that's making an appointment or paying a bill or applying for a job or whatever, and that's something that an AI summary in Google can't do for you. It cannot make an appointment for you. It cannot apply for a job, that kind of thing. So what we're talking about is how do we create content that still drives people to our website to have them do the thing that we want them to do, that ultimately shows that our marketing strategies are effective and that we're demonstrating ROI. And so it's back to that thing about what I think, said as we kind of started this topic. While I do think that you're having these AI summaries and zero-click search results that have an impact on us, at the same time, we have to begin, and we're seeing organizations that have begun to be more creative about how to affect those AI answers and create the right content that still shows up in the search for the people who didn't get their answer at that AI level. And that's where we can affect the top of the funnel. So I think we have to think about, what is it we're trying to do? How do we still do that in this environment that we're in? And then how do we still get them to the bottom of the funnel where they're converting and doing the thing that we want them to do with our organization? And that's some of what's going to be talked about at HCIC. I'm still learning it myself, but it's definitely having an impact on our industry.
That's for sure. And it's funny from our standpoint, this is what we live in. This is the world we are at our agency are thinking about hourly, certainly daily. And some of the hints that what we're seeing broadly is, well, the only thing you have to do now is just be everywhere. And you have to truly be a thought leader. That's the biggest thing. I think that in a way this plays into the strengths of some of our clients because like I get, I've been doing my podcast for a long time and, I get invited as a guest periodically. And a lot of times people ask me like, well, Stuart, as an agency owner, how do you become a thought leader? It's like, well, first of all, know your stuff. Like in our world today, everybody wants to be, an interloper and just like, I'm a thought leader. I just call myself a thought leader. Like you have to actually put in the homework. And I think, when you have respected institutions, at least, or, doctors, you can jump further to the front of the line by leveraging that thought leadership,
having that
being
expertise
everywhere there. And that's
right.
really, really, it was important before you guys. I have a pie chart I show in some of my presentations that shows like, okay, technology and content were important, and so was reputation. But now that thought leadership and brand are really rocketing forward in terms of being important. And how do you manage that? And how do you make up for example, with paid search, the losses you're just going to lose? But focus on the bottom of the funnel. And then going back to what you guys both said, sort of the high funnel stuff, so much of my searches now, like I have Perplexity, a premium Perplexity that I got for free for being a LinkedIn, whatever I am. But at least now it's free. It'll cost me money, I'm sure soon. I use the Perplexity app for almost everything. Like it's on my phone right next to Google, and I use Perplexity far more because most of my questions aren't buying intent. Like they could be anything, like what really happened with blah, blah, blah. And it's like, or here's one of my favorites lately is because I hate listening to I don't have time, I would rephrase that. I don't have time to listen to every podcast I want to. Wish I could listen because I love listening to them. But I can take the summary, the transcript, and ask AI to tell me what are the key points in seconds. Like those kind of things are just fantastic. A couple of things before.
That is amazing, isn't it? To be able just to take a long document and ask AI to just summarize it.
Yeah, that's just like
Yeah.
in our world, that's really great. A couple things before I let you guys go. Just a minute on the growing importance of personalization and marketing in healthcare, because you guys, that's one of the things you guys are saying or you're seeing as well at your conference coming up.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of self-explanatory in many ways, but I think the deeper we get into everything and the way the world is moving and the way the internet and digital is moving, healthcare has to continue to become personalized. I'm at an age where I don't need, information about birthing babies. I don't need certain things in my life any longer, unfortunately, so send me content that's specific to me, send me information that's helpful, and then help me do things quickly that, schedule an appointment, get my mammogram, do that, get my test results. Those are the things that are, I think are incredibly important. And the more that we can personalize generic content that comes out, as well as how do I work with my healthcare provider to get the things I need, I think that's got to be a high point for marketers and operations in healthcare.
So,
Yeah.
Mike, another comment on that?
Well, I was just going to say, Kathy's right. There are. I think about it the same way she's kind of talking about it. There's kind of two ways to look at it. There's authenticated personalization, which is, inside the firewall. I know that you're Stuart Gandalf, and I know that you're needing this follow-up appointment, and so there's that experience, which is
Mm-hmm.
an experience we can control. And then there's the highly targeted personalization, which is that I don't exactly know who you are, but I can pinpoint that you are in this kind of demographic category by the answers that you're giving me to my questions, and it's more targeted content to you, which has a higher level conversion rate, and both of those areas are seeing a lot of growth in the last couple of years. So there's, again, at HCIC, we're going to have folks that are talking about both of those kinds of things.
And I think, it's just as we, a couple other comments, and I'd love to hear final thoughts from you guys. But so that's going to lead a lot of people. Wait, what about HIPAA? And that's another topic you guys are going to be talking about, right? Digital tracking technologies. Those are crucial things that are not new topics. It was like the talk of the town, a couple of years ago,
Yep.
2023, especially 2022, 2024. But that, I think again, it's like eventually people are going to figure out how to navigate stuff. Although we have a major health system that won't put any pixel, even with the tools like Fresh Paint, they won't do any tracking. They just won't. They're like, they were part of a lawsuit. They're just not doing it. So it's like, that's a thing, right? It's a thing.
That's a choice.
It's a new reality. But I would love to hear any other hot topics or anything more about your conference. Get people excited from you guys. I'll be there to see you guys and
Great.
talk to you for all 3 minutes while I can between the other hundreds of people you have to talk to.
Well, the Healthcare Interactive Conference, HCIC, is going to be in November 9th through the 12th in Las Vegas at Caesar's Palace. We're really excited. We're going to start on Sunday night with a welcome party and an awards program, and then go Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday.
Very
And we've got 60 plus concurrent sessions, 3 or 4. We have 3 keynotes, 3 main stage panel discussions, and 10 really deep dive master classes. So we've got a ton of content to push out over that short, limited period of time.
great, Mike.
And the
additional
website
comments?
for that is hcic.net. So if anybody is hearing us and they're interested in learning more about it, the website has all the information. It has the agenda, how to sign up and how to get there and how to make a reservation and all that kind of stuff. So hcic.net is the place to go.
Great. And if you decide to go and you're a listener, make sure to reach out to me on LinkedIn and I'll try to say hi when we get a few minutes together between sessions.
And you'll see Mike and I walking around or flying around the conference the entire time. Stop us and say hi to us too.
Kathy, you do look a little frantic sometimes.
Like, where's that coffee? And why don't we have another coffee urn?
Yeah, I mean that in the most loving way possible, but it's a lot, baby. I tell you.
It is. It's a lot to manage, but we have a really good team behind us, so we're incredibly lucky.
Yeah, the Vegas is a great venue too. Like we haven't been doing it since COVID. We used to do seminars multiple times in Vegas, and it's just such a great venue to do. obviously
So much
conferences with you
fun.
guys or seminars. And I think also the networking part of it, I don't know if you guys have any comments as we're wrapping up here, but the networking part is, and I would say honestly that I should have taken better advantage of that earlier in my career. I was so busy building our agency. I mean, I network, but there's so much, such rich relationships. If you invest the time, it's like every time you go to these things, it's better, you know people. Any comments on that part of it?
It's so interesting. Today I got an email from a friend of mine, a colleague of mine who it came back, had just came back, had seen this article about conferences should be adding hallway tracks. That we
Yeah.
need to have a hallway track because some of the best conversations, some of the best education, some of the best fun that you have is when you run into people in the hallway between sessions and between events and you have a conversation. And if there's and I think it's so true because it's those, unsolicited kind of spontaneous conversations that you have with somebody that says, hey, I know about that. Or even in the exhibit hall, you're standing next to somebody and you're talking to a vendor or an exhibitor, and somebody says, hey, you should think about this too, that's coming by. But that hallway track, because we've got 7 tracks of education, everything from branding and social media to consumer engagement and tools and technology, but we don't have a hallway track of what are you going to learn when you're just chatting with people.
I love that. That's an innovative idea. I can just
I
think
wish there was a way to make it make it a real thing.
I'll help. Let me volunteer. It's funny.
We got to figure out how to do a hallway track. We are
Yeah.
going to do a putting green this year, so maybe that can be the start of our hallway track.
The last time I was at your conference last year, like, in the middle of the meeting, I'd be talking to someone like, our mutual friend Rob Klein, and then a private equity guy who owns a couple of businesses we work with walks by, and then somebody else walks by, and then, oh, have you met this person? And I would say if you're, newer in your career and you haven't really done this stuff, I know it's a little daunting when you're just getting started out to get to know people, because it's like I feel kind of lonely, especially if you're there by yourself. But I would say start talking to exhibitors for one thing. They know
Yeah.
a lot of them know everybody, and they can introduce you, and you can start learning and start following the speakers. There's a lot that you can do with that. So it takes time, but it's certainly a lot more fun when you know somebody when you go to a conference.
Yeah, and if you're an introvert, it's tough. I know that, for some, but we're big believers that the exhibit hall is so important because the exhibitors are so knowledgeable about their niche and their part of the world. I mean, look at yourself, Stuart. What you know about the agency and SEO and those kinds of things. You have a wealth of knowledge that someone in a smaller hospital or a smaller system doesn't have. So, don't go in there thinking, oh, they're only going to try to sell me or they're going to scoop me up and that kind of thing. But go in there with a learning mind, and you can learn so much from vendors and exhibitors if you give them the opportunity to share their expertise.
Great. Awesome. With that, I'm going to close. Thank you guys. Always fun talking to you. Thanks for putting on a tremendous conference, and
Thank you.
We'll refer more business to you and hope to work with you for years.
Hope we get to see a bunch of new faces there this year.
Good deal.
Thank you, Stuart.
Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Stuart.